Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Winning Momentum Podcast with me, your host, Scott Sinclair. I think we're episode 195, getting close to that 200 mark. As you know, we are available on YouTube, on the Winning Momentum Podcast channel. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. That's where we are, so come check us out there. And welcome to the show. Welcome to the show for this week. We've had some good guests lately. We had Anna Nesterova. If you haven't checked out that interview discussion, I thought it was really good. David Cohen, Aaron Hammer, to name a few. Of our, Laura was on talking about personal branding. So surf through the past episodes, check those out if you want. Now, as for this show, as you know, I do some solo content just to try to give you some technical information or just content that's not easily going to come out of a discussion with a guest. And that's what we're doing today. And specifically, I'm writing right now as we speak. I'm writing for a speech that I'm giving in a couple of weeks in Vegas at a trade show conference, a fairly large one. And I'm one of several speakers, but I think we have a good slot and I have half an hour. I've been advised I should talk for 20 minutes and then have 10 minutes available for question and answer. And my topic is 3 action items to immediately improve your business. So 3 action items to immediately that you can just implement right now immediately to improve your business. So I've been making my notes. I've been sketching out how this speech is going to work, and it would help me a lot. And maybe you'll enjoy the content, but it would help me a lot to walk you through this. Where I'm going to go, I learn by trying to present, by practicing over and over. Obviously, if you're giving a speech to employees, if you're giving a speech to the world at large, if you're doing this type of show, well, it's helpful. It's really helpful to have a forum such as this where I can just talk out loud, learn from my mistakes, get some feedback from you. And you're going to find, I hope, if you're in the business world, and specifically if you are an entrepreneur, an owner-manager, otherwise responsible for a business, or you're hoping to run a business one day, you're a student and you want to be an entrepreneur, this is about making your business better right away if you're not satisfied with what is going on with your business. Or in many respects, this would be helpful if you're not pleased with what's going on in your life either. It really breaks down into 3 action items, as I said, and one of those is math. It will not be applicable to your life because outside of business, because it's business math, but the other 2 items will be. The other 2 action items will be. So let's jump into this. It's the middle of the day. I'm drinking a beautiful bottle of Barolo while I'm talking to you. So that's what I'm enjoying here. If you're not on the video, you won't see that on the audio. But it's a very nice glass of wine. So as I said, I have 20 minutes, which isn't much time. I have way too many notes to talk about today. To fit within my hour today. So I don't know how quick this is going to be or how long it's going to be, because as I said, we're really just walking through this together. And when I'm done, in the notes of wherever if you're on YouTube, you can put it in the comments. If you're on the audio podcast, you can't do that, but you can go to thescottsinclair.com. You can provide some feedback. What are your 3 points? I tried this on LinkedIn, got a lot of thumbs up, but not much response. If you had to give somebody 3 action items to improve their business right away, what would it be? Something that if you provide those action items to someone who is in business or wants to be in business, that if they implemented those steps, which is easy to do, costs nothing, that they would better understand their business right away. They would become a better leader. They'd be more profitable. They have better cash flow. They would break through the negative barriers that are derived from fear, negative thinking, all of these roadblocks that are holding you back. This is a way to drive through some of those roadblocks. And as we go here, I'm going to take a couple of notes because I already wanted to change some of the wording of what I had put down. Now, you may ask yourself, how do you, Scott, how do you know that I'm going to experience those benefits from implementing these 3 action items? And what I would tell you is that I've been working with troubled businesses for over 30 years. Yes, I'm that old. I turn them around when they're troubled. So I jump right into operations and look to fix operations or the balance sheet. I restructure troubled businesses. I refinance businesses. And I've done that in almost every industry that I can possibly think of. I've done it from companies that are startup to companies that have been around multiple generations to companies that are worth nothing right away, to companies that have a value of billions and billions of dollars. And I've worked with hundreds of these companies in 27 countries. I've done over 25 billion, perhaps closer to 30 billion in transaction value. And am I a specialist in your industry? I am not. Okay, whatever your industry is, I'm not a specialist in that or any other industry. But the action items that I want to talk about on this show are applicable to all businesses, regardless of your industry, regardless of whether you're, in raw materials, in manufacturing, and distribution, and retail, and online. It doesn't matter. Whatever your business in services, whatever your business is, these action items apply to everything. Okay, so I don't want you hearing these and thinking about them and saying, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't apply to my business. My business is unique. No, it's not. No, it's not. You can do this with all types of businesses. All right, let's dive in a little bit here. Let me ask you a question. Don't forget, I'm going to be giving this speech in Las Vegas. So here I think is a relevant question. If you flipped a coin, if you were to flip a quarter 1,000 times, how many times would that quarter come up heads? Did you say 500? Did you say roughly 500? I think that's the right answer, right? Easy statistics. You flip this coin 1,000 times, this quarter that you have, it comes up heads roughly 500 times. That's what you would expect. There's your 50-50 probability across time. What if you were to flip that same coin, that same quarter, if you were to flip that quarter 1,000 times, and 1,000 times in a row, it came up heads. 1,000 times in a row, you flipped a coin and it came up heads. What are now the chances that that quarter on the next flip, on the 1,001st, I better get that language right for my speech, but on the 1,001st flip, what is the probability, what are the odds that that's going to come up heads for the 1,001st time? And you would think, well, that's nearly impossible. But you're wrong. The chances are 50-50 because the past is not indicative of the future. It's 50-50 on every flip. I learned that a long time ago in Las Vegas playing roulette. You know, you'd walk through and you see the roulette table and it'd be, on the roulette, you can play the numbers, which I don't know anything about, or you could just play on the side. You just put some money on black or red, just black or red. And you've got not quite a 50-50 chance because there's one or two non-black, non-white, green-colored slots on that roulette wheel, I think for 0 and 00. But you're close to 50%. So 50% black just for round numbers and 50% red for round numbers. And you walk by a table and you see it's gone 13 blacks in a row. I mean, that's pretty tempting to put your money on red, right? That's pretty tempting because what are the chances it's going to go black again? And the answer is it's still 50-50. It doesn't matter what the history is. It doesn't matter that it's gone 13 times in a row already. That is not relevant to what's going to happen on this next roll. And then me being the smart guy that I used to be when I was younger, I thought to myself, well, I can game that system by changing the amount of my bet because it's going to go red sometimes. So I could start, at X, and then let's just say I started at $25 and then I lost. So you can go to $50 and then you lose. You can go to $100 and you lose. You can go to $200 and you lose. You can go to $400, except you can't, because that's why they put table limits on on games. Is it just makes sure that the statistics always end up in favor of the house. And so they're pretty smart people too in Vegas when it comes to the math. But the important part of this story of the flipping the coin is that it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. You still have the same probability of success and failure today. If I'm successful personally at fixing 1,000 businesses in a row, we talked about flipping a coin with 1,000 heads showing up in a row. Let's say I fixed 1,000 businesses and they were all successful. Or maybe I fixed a few hundred because 1,000 is a lot and they were all successful. Well, what are the chances that I can take those same moves that I made to fix those businesses and be successful on the new business? And the answer is obviously not as objectively definable as if we were flipping coins. And the answer is maybe it's pretty good. Maybe I'm more experienced than somebody else doing it like yourself. I've learned a lot from my failures, right, and from my mistakes. So maybe the chances are pretty good, but it's not certain. The whole point of this is the outcome is not certain just because I've done it successfully many, many times before. The outcome of your business is not certain just because you happen to be a success before. Or you think you're going to be a success. You think you're a hustler. You think you're smart. You think you have a competitive edge. You think you have the best product going. The outcome is still not certain. And so you don't know in business, and very often in life, you don't know anything for certain. You think you do, and that's what gets you in trouble. But you don't know for certain much of anything. And that leads us to action number 1, to immediately improve your business, which is that if you're not satisfied with your results, if you're not satisfied where your business is heading, if you're not satisfied with your life and you're not getting the results just out of life that you want, well, you're doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong. So change, try new stuff. Action item number 1 is to embrace change. I've been as I've said, the turnaround or transition leader of many an underperforming business, hundreds perhaps in my career. And the commonality I've found across all of these experiences was that existing leadership is always resistant to change. Okay? The existing leaders are resistant to change. By definition, that's why they're in trouble. They're not changing. They're not trying new things out. They're doing the same stuff they've tried before. It's continuing to fail as before. And I see it all the time. Existing leaders are resistant to change. Whereas if you just go talk to the employees, and say, hey, what's wrong with this business? The people that not are involved in leadership, well, these employees are not blinded by prejudice. They're not blinded by past experience. They can look at something obviously and just say, well, this is wrong. It needs to change. They may not have the answers, but they know what's wrong and they know what needs to change. Maybe not necessarily what changes to what, but they know that what we're doing right now isn't working. And that is a consistent observation. 100% of the companies that I've walked into that are troubled, that's always the same. And so much so, I created my core weapon for turnarounds out of that, which is what I call the listening tour, which is I go directly to the people on the line that are making the money, that are baking the product, that are making the product, not baking the product, that are making the product, that are delivering the service, and without their leaders there. And I ask them, hey, what's going on? Cone of silence. This doesn't go beyond me. What do you know about this business? How did it go wrong? And what I learned after a couple months of doing that, as best my schedule permits, I have an action plan for how to turn around the business. I know what's wrong because there's so much commonality and it's so painfully obvious, the things that are wrong, and you can start making changes. I can start making changes. But the interesting question there is why? Why is it the employees know what's wrong, but the leadership can't see what's wrong? Why is that? And if you repress leadership, by the way, if I come up with my list of 5 items to change or 10 items to change that are strategic, not the 800 nitty-gritty items, but the core of the issue, and I say to leadership, here's what we're going to focus on, there'll be a laundry list of excuses why, A, those aren't really a problem, and B, I have no idea what I'm talking about anyways because they can't be fixed. Okay? That's the answer you're going to get. So what is that? What is that? Well, I would suggest to you that is exactly confirmation bias. Confirmation bias, and when I press them on the answer, this is what we're going to change, it triggers cognitive dissonance, which is why you get this. It's why you get this pushback, this anger, these personal attacks, and the general throwing up the hands and saying this can't be done. So what is confirmation bias for those of you that don't know? I know that if you listen to my content, you'll hear this all the time because I think it's so important. But just to go over it quickly, confirmation bias is effectively, it's first of all to know it's a feature, it's not a bug. It's a feature, not a bug. And confirmation bias is how the human brain works. In other words, we don't go out for every little thing that we're doing during the day, or for anything for that matter, seek a bunch of facts, and then make a decision based on those facts. Oh, I'm hungry for lunch. Wonder what's available. And you go out and you find a bunch of stuff in your fridge, or if you're at the home office, or you go out to a cafe or something, or you look at the universe of restaurants that you can go to, and you've already decided more or less what you want, and now you're looking for facts to support that. Oh, I can get that salad over here. I really like that salad. I'm going to go get that particular salad, and off you go to get the salad. What you do not do is take the information from the whole universe of available foods and then start ticking them off and making a decision, comparing and contrasting your alternatives. You do not do that. The human brain comes up with decisions first. This is what I want, which is your bias. And then what it does is it looks for facts that support that bias. It looks for facts that support that bias. It ignores facts that go against that bias, that speak to the opposite. Or it rationalizes and amends outliers and facts that can be rationalized, amended to meet the confirmation bias, right? And so that's how the human brain works. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. You have a prejudice, you have a bias that you've come up with based on your experiences, based on your desires, based on what you want to believe, and then you hear the facts that you want to hear. You do not hear the facts that you do not want to hear, and that's what confirmation bias is. And then if you get hit in the head with a fact that is counter to your narrative, it is counter to your bias, it literally triggers stress in the body, in the brain, and that stress is called cognitive dissonance. It's just like, right? So when I come listen to the employees and come back to leadership and say, here's the problems, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it just triggers cognitive dissonance because it's probably accurate. Those probably are the problems, or 1 of a million problems, or 5 of a million problems. But, key problems that if we focus on those, it's going to fix. And that triggers stress within the leaderships, within their brains. It triggers cognitive dissonance. So, when you look at troubled companies, you see what is probably a collection of good leaders. And they believe that they're good leaders. They believe that they're good managers. Maybe they've been successful many, many, many times before. Maybe that has happened. Just like the coin has come up heads all the time. And what you do as a leader in that situation, the risk is that you start to rationalize facts that are counter to your narrative, that tell you you're in trouble. You start to rationalize facts that are annoying, and that may be challenging your bias. And so what you need to do, if you continue to do that over time, what happens is an unsatisfactory condition of a business or situation in your life becomes normalized. And you see that, think about your own life all the time. Think about unhealthy relationships, for example, right? And you ask yourself, well, how does that person put up with that unhealthy relationship? Because it's normalized. Because over time, they want, that person wants that relationship to work. Their confirmation bias is, whatever, that it's good, but, right, it's a great relationship except for these annoying little things over here. Or it's not really my partner's fault, it's my fault, I'm worthless and I deserve these things, right? You get these sorts of biases, and then the brain is looking for facts and amending things in those ways, and then it just becomes normalized. So I can give you an example from the business world. I recognize I'm already 20 minutes in my 20-minute speech, but I told you I was going to have an hour of content here, and then I'm going to start, paring it down into my speech. I walked into a turnaround probably 5-6 years ago now. I don't recall what. A good mid-sized company had a manufacturing element to it. And, there were 6 key senior management individuals running this company. There was the person in charge, and then say 5 or 6, I don't remember the exact number, senior executives underneath that person, like a CFO, for example, or a CEO or somebody like that. And when I first went to meet these people, they needed help desperately with the turnaround. They were going to run out of money. They were losing money for several years before I met them. And I met with these 6 key individuals. And out of those, what I learned is that one of them, in my very first meeting at, 2:00 in the afternoon, showed up quite drunk. We had a meeting in the middle of the day with a high-priced consultant, which is the role I was playing at that time, coming in, and I become an executive of the company. So I'm not really a consultant, but I'm this high-priced guy coming to help this situation. And this is one of the key individuals in the entire company with his job on the line, and he's hammered. He's just been drinking a lot, as I guess he always did, or maybe still does, and showed up to this meeting drunk. Another one out of those key individuals, another really, really critical senior executive to the company, was, perhaps the most unprofessional, nasty, backstabbing, two-faced, feared and hated person I've possibly ever met inside an organization. Really quite something. And, you would get private copies of emails from this person to other executives that would be like pages long and just rants of nasty, ugly stuff and attacks about this person and their performance. Although it was never about performance, it was all personal stuff and, their personal failings. And yet that same executive would suck up to the leader, would suck up to me. And so, there's another one we had. We had a third who was a really nice person and just generally incompetent, like way out of their league for the chaos that goes on inside of a troubled organization. We had a fourth executive who was very competent and a nice guy, but culturally terrified and hiding from the other people, hiding from the drunk guy, hiding from, the nasty person I referred to. And so just kept his head down, sat in the back and, did his job, but didn't contribute a hell of a lot because of that fear factor. You had another one that didn't do anything. It just took a high price and really wasn't doing much of anything at all. And when you confront, so there's, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of your core 6 people. So basically everybody. And when you confront the owner on that, when I confronted the owner on that, they didn't even recognize it was a problem. Oh, yeah, we really have to be careful with that guy because he drinks too much and he's got a problem. We're going to figure out how to help him, right? Yeah, this person is super nasty and backstabbing, and I get complaints about this person like every 10 minutes all day long of my whole life. But, that person's kind of critical to operations or to management team. And so I'm not making changes. So there's a rationalization. How are you ever going to make money and turn around a business with that as your core management crew? It just doesn't make any sense. And So there's an example of not being able to see the problem. In the interest of time, I'm just going to cut forward and skip some of what I've jotted down here, which is one of the value addeds of me doing this for you in the short run. So shocking to me how many leaders of failing businesses can't see or acknowledge the business is failing at all. You think of a person in a personal life with a serious addiction. Maybe you've never met anybody. I fear that far too many of you have seen people like that or had people like that in your family, and they suffer from a serious addiction. And all too commonly, that individual rationalizes their drinking habit or their drug habit, and they don't, they deep down, they understand the destruction they're causing to themselves and to others, but they're not acknowledging there's just this disconnection in the brain that they really need to change. Okay. And the addiction continues until, if they're lucky, they hit rock bottom, right? You hear about this all the time even if you don't have anybody in your life in this situation, you hear about it on shows or documentaries or things that you read. This suffering person needs to hit rock bottom to where they just know if they don't change, the need is obvious and imperative to change. And if they don't, they're going to die, right? And troubled businesses are the same. They often have to hit the business equivalent of rock bottom before leadership is woken out of its confirmation bias, out of its prejudice, and truly embraces the need to change. But when the leader does embrace the need to change, the turnaround begins. And everything that was so difficult to decide before becomes really, really easy. Do I need a key individual who's drunk in the middle of a day? Or is that just not accomplishing anything and costing me a salary? Terminated. What about the person who's unprofessional, nasty, backstabbing, two-faced? What do I do with terminated? Terminated that person. What about the incompetent COO? Terminated and replaced with a new structure to fill that job that makes some sense. When we make those changes, that person that was hiding in the back and didn't want to stick his head up all of a sudden became a critical and productive part of the management team. What about the big salary that wasn't doing much of anything? Tried to terminate it, wasn't successful on that, but I was successful on a bunch of other things. I didn't get the go ahead, in other words, from the owners for personal reasons. They were friends, etc. And but if you get over the hurdle of accepting that you have to change, all of a sudden those decisions become way easier, and you blow this confirmation bias out of the water. But in business, the good news is you don't have to wait to hit rock bottom to start changing. Instead, you can create triggers right now. You can create triggers that will serve as a starting gun for change. And those triggers are key performance indicators, the 3 to 5 key performance indicators that exist in every business and that drive both cash flow and profit. And later on one of my action items, actually the next one, we're going to talk about one of those KPIs. But to sum up this point, action item number 1, which has taken far too long, but it's good to talk it through. Thank you for staying with me. The key point about action item number 1 is embrace the need to change. If you understand that confirmation bias exists, that it's a feature, not a bug, it is supposed to exist. You're supposed to take mental shortcuts. If things aren't going well, you have to accept that bias exists and you need to change. You need to set up triggers so that you can be objective about that change. Oh, look at those 3 to 5 things that I track every day or every week. They're going in the wrong direction. I guess I need to change, right? I need to change. So you've come up with something objective to do that. And then you try things out. A/B test, everything. You're always trying things out, specifically systems, which we'll talk about soon. You try out systems, different ideas, different ways about going about your business to see if your KPIs start improving. That's what change is. You need to embrace the need. You need to embrace the need to change, and when you do, difficult decisions become easy. Everything becomes less confusing. You know where to focus, and you know why you're focusing there. What is it going to take for you to embrace change, right? What bad things have to happen before you start to change? What is rock bottom for you? Or would you rather start changing today, setting up your KPIs and understanding that you need to start trying different things? All right. So that's action number one, is embrace the need to change. Everybody listening to this speech is listening to it because they're looking for 3 immediate action items to improve their business. By definition, they have to start doing things different. All right. Number 2, increase your contribution margin. There are 2 financial tools that on the Winning Momentum podcast and its predecessor, Martinis with Scott, I talked about all the time. And one is a 3 to 5 year rolling monthly financial projection, and the other is a 13-week cash flow model. So two spreadsheet models. One is a monthly rolling financial projection, probably 3 to 5 years, depending on what you're trying to communicate in the model. And one is a cash flow. In the monthly model, the way we build it at our firm is we have some historical annual financial statements in there, and then a projection on an annual basis going forward. But the annual projection comes from the monthly projection, which is month by month, and you're projecting balance sheet, income statement, statement of changes, so a cash flow, month by month. And the drivers of that monthly projection in turn come from a third tab, which is called an assumptions tab. And the assumptions tab have your core KPIs in it. Okay. We talked about key performance indicators before. All right. And it's really, really important in your business to be able to identify those 3 to 5 KPIs that are sensitive to all of your results. Your earnings and your cash flow really are dictated by those KPIs. And everybody listening to this has different businesses. And so I'm not going to try and guess what your KPIs are as I'm talking here, but I'll tell you what one of the most important is all the time, 100% of the time. Any business, doesn't matter what it is, probably the most important KPI is contribution margin. Okay, what is your contribution margin percentage? And so if you want to make more money, I talk about this all the time. What is the profit equation for any business? Well, it's revenue, right? Your sales minus your costs equals profits. And you could even think a little bit more in depth, and you could say that your costs are both variable costs and fixed costs. So profit is equal to sales minus variable costs minus fixed costs. That's your profit. All right. If you want to earn more money, then you need to focus on those 3 items. Okay. So obviously you could increase your revenue. That would help you make more money. You could decrease your variable costs. That would help you be more profitable. You could decrease your fixed costs, or otherwise known as your overhead, and that would make you more profitable. But in what order should you do that? What is most important? What is the most highly sensitive KPI out of those 3? And the answer is focus on contribution margin, which I'll define in a second. But contribution margin is greater, is more sensitive, is more important to your profitability than overhead, which is what you should focus on second, is reducing your overhead. And third is your revenue. Okay. And so contribution margin, which I'm going to define in a second, focus on that first, and then focus on your overhead. And then lastly, focus on your revenue growth. Now, your revenue. So when I step into a troubled company, when any turnaround person steps into a business that is not performing well, and let's say that same company that I talked about where we changed a great deal of our management team, if I walk into there in that company, I'm going to make up numbers, okay? Put as many zeros behind it as you like. But let's say that company was doing $100 million in revenue. It wasn't, just a hypothetical number at its peak. And then when I met the company, it was doing $80 million in revenue, or $75 million, I think would be a more apples to apples, $75 million in revenue. Do I think to myself, if I can get this business back to $100 million in revenue, we're going to be profitable, turnaround fixed? I do not. Okay. And no turnaround person worth their salt is going to do that. What they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, we're at 75. I know that. How low could it go? What's my worst case scenario on revenue? Like, is 75 my base, or maybe 70 is my base, or 65 is my base? What if it's $65 million? Okay. How do I make money? If I can count on that, how do I make money at $65 million? That's how a turnaround person thinks. They put the revenue at the back. How most executives think that don't have any experience with trouble is they start coming up with what we call the financial world hockey stick projections, right? We start saying, well, that's 75. That's not going down to 65. That's going to 100. And that's just next year. That's like right now. We're on that track. That's what we used to be before. We're going to do it again. And Mr. Banker, when you see that $100 million, we're going to be profitable. And then the year after we're going 25% growth, we're going to 125 million. So they're focused on top line. They're not focused on making money at the lower revenue level. Why are they focused on top line, by the way? Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias again. They believe they're a $100 million company. They're looking for facts to justify their $100 million company. When I walk into that situation, I see them as a 75 heading to 65. I make different decisions. I know that sounds simple, but it's really that dead simple. All right. So contribution margin, I said, is the first thing that you ought to be looking at if you want to make more money. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What is contribution margin? Contribution margin is the amount of money from every dollar of sales that is available to help you pay your overhead and your profit. Oops, now I'm just screwing up my speech here. Just bear with me. Yep, but sorry about that. I lost all my notes on you, so just bear with me. Here we go. Contribution is the amount of money from every dollar of sales that is available to help you pay your overhead and your profit. Okay, so contribution margin. Remember I said when we're talking about profitability, I gave you three metrics: selling price minus variable costs minus fixed costs. Well, your contribution margin is as simple as your selling price minus your variable costs. Okay, and your contribution margin is that contribution margin divided by your sales. So you're just expressing the same thing in a percentage. So if you buy something, for example, for $50, let's just keep it super simple. You're buying something for $50 and you resell it for $100. You have no other costs. Okay. So you buy something for $50, you resell it for $100. Your costs, therefore, are entirely variable. If you don't sell something, you don't have to buy it. Right? And the more you sell, the more you have to buy. The less you sell, the less you have to buy. So the cost side of this is variable, tied to sales. And so your contribution margin is equal to the sale of $100 minus the variable cost of $50. Your contribution margin is 100 minus 50 is 50. Your contribution margin percentage, okay, so your contribution is 50. Your contribution margin percentage is 50%. Which is your contribution of $50 divided by 100. Okay, does that make sense? So every time you sell a unit for $100, you have $50 left over to pay your fixed costs, should you have any, or for profit, which is sort of similar to a fixed cost. And another way of saying that is 50% of every sale, of every amount of revenue, 50% of every sale goes to pay your overheads to the extent that you have any. So that's what contribution margin is. And it's often confused with things that are, that it's not, like markup. A markup, an example, is I bought something for $50 and I marked it up and to $100 and I sold it for $100. Well, that's 100% markup, right? It cost me $50. I'm marking it up 50 plus 50 is 100. That's 100% markup, which is sort of a backwards way to think about a contribution margin. And probably leaves a bunch of variable costs out in that analysis. So it's not a markup. It's also not a gross margin. If you have financial statements done from professional accountants, on those financial statements, you will see a gross margin. And in that gross margin, there will be some fixed costs. Therefore, it's not a contribution margin. And quite frankly, as a chartered, as a CPA, a Canadian version of a CPA, there's really no financial analysis good that comes out of general margin reporting. It's completely useless. Focus always on contribution margin. So sales minus variable costs. What are variable costs? Well, think of things like direct materials. So if you're selling we make, for example, a CBD-based health product. I'm not allowed to say that CBD helps with health, but that would be the intent of it. I'm not making any claims one way or the other. So you've got a CBD health product, hypothetically speaking. Well, what would your variable costs be? Well, one would be direct materials, which would include the CBD, which you buy from me. You have to put in some carrying oil, like a canola or something. So that's a direct variable cost. The more you sell, the more canola you have to buy. You have to buy some flavoring. You have to buy some packaging, right, to bottle this stuff up. And so those are your direct materials are variable. Your direct labor is variable. You have hourly people probably in the back doing the manufacturing, doing the distribution. The more you sell, the more hourly labor you need. The less you sell, the less hourly labor you need. You have shipping and freight. Now you deliver this stuff out to the retail stores, your distribution channels where you're selling it, or maybe you're doing drop ship or what have you. So your shipping and freight are variable costs. The more you sell, the more you have to spend on shipping and freight. Let's say you have some commissions. Commissions are variable. For every dollar you sell, you've got to pay out some number on that on commission. So those are variable costs. And what are not variable costs? What are fixed costs? Well, think about your office staff. Doesn't matter if you sold 100 units today or 0 units today, the people in the office still came in. You still paid them. You still paid your rent. You still paid your insurance. You still paid your professional fees. You paid your marketing and branding expenses, whatever your budget is for that. And so those costs are generally fixed. So let's give an example. Let's say we have a selling price of $100 and we have direct materials costs us $35 and direct labor costs us $10. Freight and shipping costs $7. Commissions cost $8. All right. So 35 in direct materials plus 10 in direct labor is 45 plus freight and shipping of $7 and commissions of $8 gives us total variable costs in that example of $60. Of course, if you were at the speech, you would have a slide to help you not have to remember that. So sales price is $100, variable costs are $60. Our contribution is 100 minus 60 is $40, right? Our contribution margin, our percentage, is that $40 out of every unit divided by the sales price of $100 is 40%. Okay, 40 divided by 100 is 40%. That's your contribution margin. Now, let's assume in that same example you have $1 million of overhead, your rent, insurance, branding, all that other stuff that you have to pay, and you have $1 million for round numbers, and every unit that you sell is contributing $40. We just decided now, with that limited information, you can calculate your break-even in units, which is if you have $1 million of fixed costs and every unit that you sell contributes $40, then 1 million divided by 40 is 400,000 units. You need to sell 400,000 units this year to break even. Want to do your break even in dollars? Same thing, but using the margin instead of the dollar contribution. You have $1 million in fixed costs divided by 0.4. Your 40% contribution margin means you have to sell $2.5 million worth of product to break even. Okay, so there's some math for you. So why is the contribution margin the most important thing, Scott? Why do you say that? Why not reducing your overheads? Well, consider that you reduce your variable cost 20% and you reduce your fixed cost 20%, okay? So your variable costs, we said, were $60. Originally, that included our direct margin, direct materials, direct labor, freight, all that stuff. Well, if we reduce that by 20%, that $60 would become $48. So for every unit we sell, our costs are $48 instead of $60. Our contribution margin, therefore, goes from 40% to 52%. Cool. Okay. Take that through the math. Our break even. Remember, our break even was 2.5 $2.5 million if we're doing our break even in dollars. Well, Now, our break even in dollars is 1.9 million for rough numbers. So our break even has gone down from 2.5 in revenue to 1.9 million in revenue. What if we do that same 20% decrease in our fixed costs? Okay. And obviously, if you can do both variable costs and fixed costs, well, that's what you should do. I'm just telling you which one is more sensitive, which one is more important. Okay. So our fixed costs were $1 million times 80%. So we're reducing those. So now our fixed costs are $800,000 instead. Well, our revenue, we still have that same contribution margin of 40%. Well, our break-even revenue is now $2 million. So on the cost structure that we had before, our break-even revenue was $2.5 million. If we reduced our fixed costs by 20%, cool. Now we only have to do $2 million to break even. But if we left our fixed costs alone and changed our variable costs by 20%, our break-even drops to a low of $1.9 million. Okay? Do you see the sensitivity there? And when you're doing these sorts of spreadsheets and calculations and trying to understand your business, and you focus 100% of the time first on contribution margin, you're going to make more money and you're going to make better decisions, and you're going to do that right away. To which you say to me, Scott, but how do I increase my contribution margin? How do I do that? Well, a couple of ways. Number one, raise prices. Raise prices right now. If you're not making enough money, raise prices and get a better contribution margin. Reduce your direct materials cost. Well, how do I reduce my direct materials cost? You could look at supplier prices, right? Go beat up your supply chain if you need to do that. Look for better yields from the raw materials. How much finished goods are you getting out of that? Better yields, less waste, whatever your process is, whatever it is to reduce your cost of direct materials, you need to start looking at ways to do that and putting in plans to reduce your costs over time. Reduce your direct labor. That's productivity. That's automation. Reduce freight. We got a company right now that we're looking, we're getting killed on the freight with the current prices, and we're looking at warehousing options, incurring some fixed costs to reduce dramatically our variable costs and therefore increase our contribution margin. You would reduce commissions. Maybe you're paying too much in commissions, and you could revisit that whole rep relationship channel and redefine that to improve your contribution margin. Look for ways. I don't know your business specifically, but I can tell you what you should be looking at right away. And there was action item number 2. Action item number 3. This podcast is called the Winning Momentum Podcast. What does winning momentum mean? And I describe it as when your employees, you wake up in the morning with the confidence and knowing that today will be a little bit better than yesterday. Simple as that. It's not the same as yesterday. It's not as terrible as it was. It's not even worse than yesterday. It's a little bit better than yesterday. And what you'll find is when you have that amount of momentum, no matter how small, if you have that winning momentum, it's everything in business. It's a positive direction. And positive direction, winning momentum attracts energy, it attracts resources, and it dispels all of the things that are negative. And negative energy, negative momentum, it just repels energy and it repels resources. When I say resources, I'm talking human and financial. And every troubled business, every underperforming business needs, more or better human capital, and it needs more cash, right? And it's momentum, positive momentum that attracts those things, and it's negative momentum that dispels those things. Nobody wants to work for a company that's going down the tubes, right? You know that. So it's about winning momentum. And I've learned that painfully over years and years and years. And you need to change the direction of your business. And the good news is you can do that right now. You can do that today. You could leave here, go back to work, and change the momentum of your business by doing a few things that will cost you nothing. It's easy to implement and will have an immediate impact. So let's just go over 3 of those. And by the way, I'm here to give you 3 immediate action items to immediately improve your business. 3 action items to immediately improve your business that you can implement right now. Well, one of those in turn has 3 items in it. So now that's 6. That's a way for me to deliver more value to you. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Number 1, start with small wins right now. Small wins right now. Do it today and then do it every day. Forget your big problems. Forget your big problems just for a moment. Everything that's going wrong in your business, everything that's going wrong in your life, forget about that right now. It's just overwhelming. You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's dark. It's crushing. It creates fear, makes you unhealthy, it gives you paralysis, okay, which just means you didn't do anything and the problem got worse, right? Forget about that. And instead, immediately choose something small, visual, and easy to complete, and then do it today. Anything, something that you can win on today that is small and easy and visual. Environmental is the way to go on this because you can see it. And in a business environment, again, this is just universal with every troubled company I've ever walked into. They're filthy. They're disorganized. It's just dingy and dark. Clean the office. Apply a fresh coat of paint. Do some minor repairs. Hire sanitation. I can't tell you how many times, well, every time you walk into a troubled business and the bathrooms are filthy. Who the hell wants to work in that? Nobody wants to work on that in that environment. Clean up the environment. You can do it. It's really easy. It's immediate. And what it does is it creates a sense that tomorrow's going to be better today. And if you do that little thing every single day, before you know it, it's going to accumulate and it's going to change culture. It is going to change culture. You didn't have to do anything more complicated or tricky than that. Start by winning small wins every day, and you're going to change culture. I was just at one of my plants last week, and I bought this company October 1st, and I bought it at a receivership, and it was very troubled, and it looked terrible. And the truth is, our performance in the last 6 months with this customer is much better than it was, but it's not awesome, right? We had a long way to go. And so they came in for their usual checkup, make sure we're not killing their supply chain. And they walked into the place, and you should have seen their eyes. They're just like big and round and open and, just wow. And they said to me, because I wouldn't normally be handling these tours, but I happened to be walking by, and they said to me, the first thing we noticed was all the cars in the parking lot. Last time we were here, there was no cars. And now it's bright, and it's painted, and it's clean. The place looked great. You guys have done an amazing job, right? And it was completely environmental. The things that we're referring to, we've had lots of substance changes as well. But the first thing that cemented their confirmation bias and the confirmation bias of our employees and the confirmation bias of yourself, if this is your business, is that we're on the winning track because people are starting to feel better every day because the place is cleaner and brighter, and that was so small and cost nothing to do. So do that. Small wins every day. Number 2, lead with positivity. Okay, lead with positivity as a technique to regain winning momentum, which is what we're talking about here. What is the power of positivity? And there's all sorts of literature and speeches about this, books, the power of positivity. It's never resonated for me. I'll tell you what does resonate for me is the negative side of this, which always resonates for me more. To me, the power of positivity is that it's the antidote to negativity. You can't be negative and positive at the same time. You have to make a choice. And sometimes it's hard. I think the default situation is negative. And when you feel that coming on, you need to fight to be positive because you're going to be one or the other. You're going to be positive and you're going to be negative. And if you're negative, negativity breeds fear, it breeds paralysis, and it results in death of your business. It might result in death in your personal life as well. Okay? But it breeds fear and paralysis. And a leadership mistake that I always see in underperforming businesses is a focus of energy on the negatives. What is the root cause of this underperformance? Who screwed up on this shift? What are you not doing in your department to make this better, right? That's focusing on the negatives. And rather than doing that, Focus on the positives. You can't expect your team to perform, to embrace change, to stick their necks out, take risks that need to be taken to embrace the change, which was our first point. You can't expect them to do that if you're talking about the negatives. You need to be doubling down on your strengths, doubling down on your positives. Your meetings need to be about rewards and congratulations for employees for doing something well and to reinforce what we need to do well today. Your meetings and your communication should not to be about fuck-ups from the past, what went wrong yesterday. I always tell my operations teams when we're in a manufacturing environment, for example, and we've got to hit our numbers today. If you were the coach of your favorite sports team, if you were the coach of the hockey team, whatever team it is, sport that it is that you would, team sport that you would like to be, apply this analogy to. But if you're the coach of the hockey team and it's game day, because every day is game day in manufacturing, every day is game day. And so it's game day and you come in the locker room, do you start yelling at people for how they screwed up the last game? Is that what you do? Or have you got all of that behind you? You've reviewed the tapes. You've talked about ways to improve in a positive fashion, not about being screw-ups, but ways to improve in a positive fashion. But on game day, what do you talk about? You talk about, we got this. Here's your reminders of the things that you need to do in a positive fashion to make this work. Here's how you are accountable to your teammates, right? That's what you talk about on game day. You don't talk about negatives. Do the same in your business. Talk about positives. Now, look at being positive does not mean being delusional. Here's your formula that I like to use for positivity. Positivity is equal to reality plus confidence plus hard work. Positivity is equal to reality plus confidence plus hard work. So you're not ignoring, you're not delusional, you're not ignoring the problems that you have, okay? But you're confident in you and your teammates' ability to deal with those issues, and you apply hard work to that, and you're going to be successful. Okay, that's my definition of positivity. Lead with positivity, and you will combat negativity, and that is the most important thing to quickly change attitudes, enthusiasm, confidence, and ultimately culture in general. If you want an employee base to take ownership and to be accountable to each other, you need to do that through positivity. There is no other way. Doing that through fear and negativity is manipulation. Lead through positivity. And lastly, systems over goals. What does that mean? Troubled companies are always chaotic, causing leaders to spend most of their time fighting fires. When not dealing with emergencies, then the leaders just spend most of their time fretting over missed goals. And I'm running out of time here. I'll give you quickly. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a troubled business and I've sat through my early day management meetings, and projected on the screen is a spreadsheet of, hundreds, maybe 800 line items of things that need to be done, micromanaged to the last detail. Like we need to change the ink in that printer. We need to move this cabinet over here to make things more efficient. And there's a name applied beside that. There's a name, beside that task. And then there's, a day by day or a week by week schedule heading out to the right side of the spreadsheet, and it's color coded when the stuff is going to be done. And then you spend 2 hours sort of reviewing one by one through these 800 items, basically why they didn't get done. And then for the rest of the day, your management team goes off and they work on their excuses for why it didn't get done, tomorrow, so that they're ready to answer this. Well, I had this come up and that come up, right? And so you're managing by goals when you're doing that, and you're not creating systems. Now, I'm not saying that goals are a bad thing to have in a business. In fact, goals, if you think about financial and operating performance goals, are really just KPIs, right? Direct materials to revenue percentage is a KPI and is a goal. I want to have that at whatever percent that is. That's my goal. We've already talked about the importance of KPIs. They're essential as a trigger for you, and they're essential to manage your business. But when it comes to creating change, what good is the goal? It's the system that creates the change. if I need to lose 10 pounds, and trust me, I do, if I need to lose 10 pounds, does that do me any good to have that as a goal? I mean, maybe it does for a day or two. I get all excited and try to do something to lose some weight. But it's probably not going to happen. Whereas if I change my system, which is I commit to daily exercise, I eliminate all sugars from my diet, I'm eliminating some carbs, I'm going to see the results in my objective measurement, and I'm going to see the weight drop off. And if it doesn't, if it's not heading towards that goal, then I have to change that system because I've embraced change. I've embraced change. I know what my goals are, which are my KPIs, which is specifically contribution margin. And then I'm trying different stuff until it works. I'm changing the system. Focus on systems. Don't focus on goals. It's the same in business. Systems create the change, not the goals. To create change, you need to build and monitor new systems. All right, so there it is. Struggling through the rough notes for my speech. I'm happy. I'm happy with where this is going. I've got to cut it down now from an hour to 20 minutes, which is just getting rid of a bunch of the fluff. And I think that's going to be good. Also, there will be some slides, some PowerPoint slides when I do the speech, so I won't have to walk you through the math so painfully. You'll just be able to see it on screen. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Give me some feedback, please. If you agree, if you disagree, if you thought the content was boring as hell, or whether it was useful to you, that would all be great. And thank you very much for listening. By the way, I have two more shows I'm shooting this week with a couple of terrific guests. I won't announce them yet, but you'll be pleased, I believe, with that. And come check us out. Come check us out on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Same on the audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google. Where else? Everywhere you can think of. Everywhere you can think of for audio podcasts, we are there. And thanks again. We'll see you all next week.